NRL Fantasy buy, hold, sell round 24. A couple of big things this week. One, no Beers this week. He's got clashes with work. He'll be back next week. Two, doing things a bit differently this week. So not normal format, going through player by player and sort of going down the list. Because what I'm thinking is you're either in a situation where it's second week of head-to-head finals and you have to make some calls this week, or you're an overall coach that is looking at the list and you've got one trade left. I know a lot of you guys have Ryan Madison or Scott Sorensen, one trade left, and can only buy a player at a certain price point. So I'm going to go through this list in this way, just sort of pounding through, looking at the good options, bad options, upgrades, downgrades, all that sort of thing, because I think that's more relevant to what we are all facing right now. So let's get right into it here. And I'm going to pound through these top ones pretty quick before going through to the more relevant players. So Nathan Cleary, easy one, must have. If you don't have him, go get him. Mitch Barnett has the buy in round 27, so he'll play 3 games. He'll miss the final round. He's very expensive. I'd skip him, but he is a beast. Latrell Mitchell probably won't come back. I'd say Jai Gray has that spot for the rest of the year, so no Latrell. Dylan Edwards, worth talking about here. If you are looking for a super pod wing fullback, a super pod, he is back probably this week. They play first game of the round, so Dylan Edwards is, that 58.7 average speaking for itself, but he's more like a 52 average when he plays with Cleary. So it's a bit of a downgrade for Edwards. I'm not going after him, but if you want a pod who has that top degree of pedigree, Dylan Edwards is that guy. Then Nico Hines, not coming back anytime soon. Damien Cook, we got Mama Zealous on the bench, and they're sort of changing things up. We saw Kalamatangi move, for example. I'm not super hyped on Cook, but if you have him, stick with him till the wheels fall off. Dave Fafita, we've all got Dave Fafita. Stick with him. He's not inspiring us with massive scores, but he's doing fine. Isaiah Yeo, absolutely crushing it. I think he's still a great option. Might get a rest around 27, but he's the top middle in fantasy. Jimmy Tedesco, match up against Parramatta this week. Again, great option. And I'll go into more depth on the guys who need it, but these are all guys we've talked about. Payne Haas out for the year pretty much. Kalamatangi, we can talk about this here. So on Kalamatangi, he's been moved to the edge spot, which it's not great news for him in fantasy. So he's more like a 45 to 50 average kind of guy when he plays on the edge, which it's not what you want from your guy who's nearly 800K, right? So with Kalamatangi, I think he's going to fade a bit. But if I owned Kalamatangi, I would be thinking hold him one more week, see what happens this week. He's got a matchup against the Tigers that is exploitable, and he should play 80 minutes. So if he grabs a try, then that score boosts up a bit. But at the same time, I'd be ready to sell him next week. I think that's the play. Cam Murray moved back to lock. We talked about this a lot when we were talking about Kalamatangi. He was a risk. He paid off for you guys, but he always had this potential to slide back onto the edge where there is that 10-point downgrade. So for mine, it's hold for one more week, see what happens, and then probably sell next week. If you want to sell this week, you can do that as well, but I think you want to sell next week. DC, I want to talk about as well. So saved his score with a try and try assist in this game pretty late in the game. But for DCE, I was a bit worried because Luke Brooks was taking all the general play kicks. So Brooks had more kick meters than Trey Evans, which is absolutely crazy. And I think that might mean that DCE, I don't know if he's taking the foot off the pedal a bit or if he has a bit of an injury he's dealing with, maybe a niggle where he's still playing, but he's got to manage it, whatever it is. It's a bit concerning. So I wouldn't buy DCE right now just because of that. But at the same time, if you have him, you got to stick with him. You got to play him against the Warriors. It's a good matchup. I just think that injury could be something. It's not being reported on much, so I don't have anything to report to you. Just a feeling from watching the game, I felt like there was something going on there. Hudson Young, still a great option. He has up and down potential, but up against the Cowboys this week, they're missing Nanai as well. So they're just going to be a bit more fragile, and they conceded a bunch of points to the Broncos. Then Tino, Hopgood, both out. Tarpanay's going all right. Had that sin bin, still a great option. Fanua Blake has the buy in round 27, so I wouldn't be targeting him for a buy. I'd go for Tarpanay instead of Fanua Blake 100%. Matty Burton, he's going all right. He grabbed a decent-ish score in this one. I don't think he's got that top-tier pod potential, but with DCE, irrelevant, and Fogarty downgraded as well. I'll talk about him in a sec. It makes Burton kind of interesting if you do want a half that is completely off the radar. Jacob Preston, absolutely killing it. Had a clean line break in this one. He is punching out big scores. Preston isn't the edge back row I would go for personally, but he is definitely within the same category as those guys. So it really is personal preference. I'm not a big Preston guy, but Preston is doing a great job. He's pumping out big scores. So if you like Preston, don't let me stop you. Go get Preston. Jerome Hughes, he's going to keep on punching, right? He's going to keep on punching. He's got the Penrith game this week. It's a tougher matchup, but Hughes normally steps up in those anyway, so I think he'll do plenty in this one. Brian Toa, good wing fullback option, but I prefer a lot of the fullbacks or the other options there instead. Brian Toe could absolutely kill it as well. Paddy Carrigan on the bye this week. Stick with him, keep him, maybe buy him next week if you're really desperate for a middle next week. That's actually a decent option, by the way. If you're a Kalomatangi owner, hold him for this week, get Carrigan next week. I don't mind that at all. Gus Crichton, I like him a lot, and I think he's massively underrated right now, which is crazy to say, but I think Gussie Crichton's seriously underrated. Everyone's talking about him like he's completely fallen off. And look, he's had a couple of average scores in a row, but I reckon he'll bounce back, and he's up against Parramatta this week, who are totally in shambles. Could be some attacking stats on offer for Gussie Crichton. He's underrated, he's underpriced, and he's a very good option right now. If I had 3 or 4 trades, I'd be using one of them to get Gus Crichton 100%. Terrell May, the minutes are so up and down. I'm not super hyped on Terrell May, so I'm skipping past that one. Jamal Fogarty, we've got to mention this. So the score was really weak last week. He's next to Cook this week in the halves. Strange has moved to center this week to cover for the fact that Rapana is out. It's not great news for Fogarty. I think that downgrades him quite a bit because Cook is a genuine half, whereas Strange is more that ball running 6. So it just means that Fogarty, 33 is not an indicator of what's going to happen, but I would say more like a 50 to 53 point game, maybe 45 to 55. That 50 average kind of play is sort of where I see Fogarty going forward. Cowboys are a good matchup, though. So if you have Fogarty, again, unless you've got heaps of trades, I probably wouldn't be rushing to sell him. Probably is only temporary, would hope, that they've got this configuration. Bo Firma, not named again. Not a lot you can do there. I think you want to stick with him, but you can sell him if you want to. Jacob Little, massive score last week. Probably not a target of mine, just the price he's at, but he has some big scores in him. Tommy Turbo, we can talk about him. So Matt one done a massive score. We talked about him a lot last week, and nice. Talked about it a lot last week, and Tommy Turbo needs those tries, right? So a bunch of tries, try assists, all that sort of thing. They're pumping up these big scores. If you think Turbo is going to play like a Dalian Player of the Year for the last 4 weeks, he has some very good fixtures to do it. Go and get him. But he has to play really good footy to score well in fantasy, whereas some of the other guys we talk about, they can play average footy and still score quite well in fantasy. So that's where I'm not a super massive fan of Turbo, whereas Herbie Farmworth, I like him quite a bit because he can have a very average game of footy and still score 40, 45 points in fantasy. At 94 last week as well, absolutely monstrous. He went crazy in that game. Then Harry Grant, by the way, sorry, with Herbie, I wouldn't be buying Herbie necessarily at that price. I think 700K is a lot of money to spend on a center right now, but I just like him as a scorer. Then Harry Grant, he's been picking up some attacking stats lately, but the scores haven't been reflecting that. So I'm not super hyped on him. I wouldn't be buying Harry Grant this week. Ewan Aitken, obviously not. Reece Walsh, we're going to talk about this. Broken hand. He's seeing a surgeon. Could be 3 to 4 weeks for Reece Walsh. Wait on news. I'll post it to the Instagram account. That you'll see it there. But Reece Walsh, it looks like he'll probably be out for the remainder of the season. If they were contending for a final spot, he might be coming back. They might have found a way to deal with it. But with them not contending for a final spot and with this being surgery optional, I think they'll just take the surgery and I think he'll be out. Keep on rolling through here. Maxi Plath. Oh, we have to mention this, right? So Max Plath, again, hard hold, stick with him. I wouldn't buy him. He's not a buy target for me, but he's definitely a hold, and he's absolutely killing it lately. The last couple of weeks, he's been on fire. The Horsburgh, if he goes to a new club at some point, he'll be interesting. Moses, obviously out. Ruben Cotter. Can't buy Ruben Cotter. He's got to buy next week, so skip him. Nakora, I'm not super impressed by. Stat 56 had some big attacking stats in it. He needs so many attacking stats to be relevant in fantasy. And if you're going to have that big attacking stat game and your ceiling there is a 56, it's not exciting. Without their halves, I think he is someone who actually suffers quite a bit. Jaden Campbell, I think Campbell pops off this week, by the way. So game against Dragons this week should be a cracker. They're 2 teams that are really fighting for that final spot. 2 teams that can switch on really well and switch off as well. But I think Campbell will be one of the top scorers this week. I think he's going to pop off for 70 to 80 points. A couple of disappointing weeks in a row. I wouldn't lose the faith. I don't own him. I'm actually really sad about that, but I think he's going to pop off. Ben Hunt in that same matchup. Again, not really fantasy relevant, so I'm going to slide past him. Galvin, we can talk about here too. So for the Galvinator, it's a big score last week. Had some big attacking plays in that one. He has that buy in round 26, but at this stage, if you still have him, there are bigger problems to deal with. So hey, if you got Galvin, stick with him for now. But just remember, in round 26, you're not going to be able to play him and there are a few injury concerns. So I wouldn't lock in round 27 for Galvin either. But that's just me being a little bit over worried, I'd say. Connor Watson, want to talk about him too. I think he's actually a really interesting option if you don't have him to buy at this stage. And you can wait a week if you want to. But if you're looking at middle options, 682K for a guy who can score 80, 90 points any given week, if he gets the minutes, is very, very attractive. Now, their bench has a lot of guys who are going to steal minutes, but I'm still a fan of Connor Watson. I've got him in my team. I think he's going to pop up this week. I think Parramatta's a good matchup, and yeah, I think he could be pretty hot for the run home. If he's not that great, 682K, you're actually not losing that much anyway, so I don't mind that option. Cam McInnes, I don't love. I think there are some better options like Connor Watson, who has a bigger ceiling, or like some of the other guys we're going to talk about very soon who have a better floor. All right, King and Best are both out. Gagai is a nice one. If you need a center, I actually really like Gagai as well. Going through Carraz, nice dual position option. Corey Jensen next week could be the option where it's a pod. 73 points last week. Grabbed a try. He doesn't score many tries, but he got one last week. Cam Murray, let's talk about him too. So he's been pretty rubbish in the edge back row spot in terms of fantasy. 57 last week. That included a try with a line break, tackle breaks in it as well. Just not a great fantasy score. He's going back to lock though, right? So him back to lock. Tallis Duncan and Kolomatangi on the edges. You got Host on the bench, so Host could come on the edge, and one of those guys could move to lock to spell Cam Murray. So he's not going to play 80 minutes, I wouldn't expect. But at 69K, a guy who has averaged 60 plus in the past at lock, very attractive option for the last 4 weeks. He is probably going to be one of the most bought guys, I would say, this week. Just a big name in a great situation with a great run home. You'd think Cam Murray will be very popular. If you want to pot up, stay away from him. If you want to go with the crowd, then stick with Cam Murray. If you're in a head-to-head finals and you're the favorite, he's the kind of guy that will probably solidify your position. For the outsider, I don't see him moving the needle because I think your opponent might buy him as well. Luai, we're going to skip him. He's no use for fantasy when Cleary's playing. Jaden Sewer, decent option as well. We talk about the edge back rows. I like this matchup against the Titans, and I like their run of matchups. They've got a good set of fixtures to finish the year. So I'm a Sewer fan. I probably like Olakau'atu more than Sewer, though, personally. But Sewer is in that same category with Jacob Preston, with Olakau'atu, these sorts of guys. So if you like Sewer and you like the Dragons, that's your option. Zach Lomax, exactly the same. Cranked out a 60. We talked about him last week as a guy who we thought would score. Got the Titans this week. I think he's up against Cam Pereira, which means aerial threat 100%. Cam Pereira is such an awesome young winger, but can be exploited defensively. So I think Zach Lomax will score a try or two in this game. If you like Lomax, you need the DPP. I like him a lot. Kellen Ponga, bit underwhelming, 64 points in a game where they were just destroying the Tigers. But he's got a matchup against Cronulla this week, who they've had some good defensive games lately, but more generally, I would say Ponga's going to exploit this one. I expect him to go pretty big. I think he'll be outscored by Lomax, though, this week. But I think Ponga, he should be that top wing fullback for the run home. So I like Ponga a lot. And if you don't have Ponga, good option to pick, bring in. Keeney's there as well, same price point, and he had a quiet one last week. I'm not blaming Keeney for this. So they got pumped, 44-0 in this game, absolutely destroyed. They got the Dragons this week. I think Keeney bounces back in this one as well, and they can't lose 44-0 again, right? Like, the Titans have been really good lately. I bought Keeney last week. I've got to admit it. I think I might have bought the Keeney curse about again because I've owned Keeney for a total of 4 games, and he scored 18 3 times and 26 the other time. Every other game he's played, he's scored 1 billion points. So maybe I'm the Keeney curse. We'll see this week. Olakau'atu, I like the look of. The Warriors matchup is a favorable one. He's at a good price point there, 638K. He's got good matchups on the run home. We talk about Manly. He's a really interesting one where if you think he's going to score maybe 2 tries in this next 4 games, then he could be a guy who could be a better option than a Cam Murray, for example. But you're backing that try-scoring rate. You're backing those big plays. You're backing that big attack from Manly. If you like Manly and you like Olakau'atu, I'm all for this acquisition. Isaiah Papali'i, low ceiling at the lock spot, so I have no interest in him. Hastings obviously out of the team. We've got Dylan Lucas coming back this week. 635K with injury concerns. I'm not jumping on, but if you're in a draft league and he's available, use your waivers on him 100%. Frizzell, if you're desperate, if you're really desperate, you could go for Frizzell. I'm not super keen on it. Luke Brooks, again, he's gotten pretty expensive now, so probably not a guy I'd be targeting, but he has been getting a lot more kick meters with DCE, picking up whatever that niggle is. So if you're in a draft league and he's available, he's not a bad option to start. And Jack Whiten. What are you doing with Jack Whiten? Whiten's got a nice matchup this week. So Tigers this week, they concede plenty of points. I think Whiten's going to have a big game. I think he's going to have a big running game in particular. He'll do all his normal stuff. He'll hit his 30 to 40 points at base. He'll have a few attacking plays. He will pop off, is my view. Then Fisher Harris, back this week on the extended bench, should come back into the team, I would expect. Arrow, Marshall King, nowhere near it. Then Iro. If you don't have Iro, don't go buy Iro, is my first bit of advice. But if you've got him, he's bench worthy, right? So I've actually been running him as a third center with Whiten and Herbie, my starters. And Iro, I've been playing him on the bench, and he's been cracking out some big scores. So 63 points, great score. Stick with him. I would expect him to be more like a 45 average. That would be my guess, maybe 45 to 50 points for the run home. But still, Newcastle, not a bad matchup for him. Should be a game where he does all right. So I'd start him pretty comfortably this week. Robson, I'm not super convinced. I think he's going to fade down the stretch. Josh Curran, looks like he's all good with that injury. If you have him, stick with him. I'd start him for sure. But if you don't have him, I'm not targeting him. Then Scotty Drinkwater. Look, Canberra's not a bad matchup. They concede a few points here and there. So Drinkwater should be okay. Should be that 40 to 50 guy more generally. So if I had Drinkwater, I'd hold on to him. But I'm not super convinced on him. I wouldn't buy him. Then Randall. Again, Randall, similar. Had him, I'd hold him. Sam Walker, if I had him, I'd hold him. Dylan Brown, if I had him, I'd hold him, but unconvincing score last week. Reed Marnie, we want to talk about this. So he went off in the 57th minute last week. Didn't play the full game. He's named again this week. The shoulder injury is absolutely of concern, especially with the Dogs missing some middle forwards who normally back Reed up. So I look at that and I'm just thinking he's going to be scoring pretty averagely for the run home. He is a guy where if you've got the trades, you can get rid of him 100%. If you don't have the trades, then you just have to stick with him and try and use him in a loophole, potentially. I wouldn't count on him as a reliable starter. That's sort of how I see this. Going through here, some more injured blokes. Lindsay Smith, what did he score last week? 43. He's probably not the Panther I'm looking for. There's actually one that I'm going to jump down to in a second. It's more interesting. Ramey and Gutho, not keepers. Coruscant, not a keeper. Wishart on the bench. Loiero, if you're in a draft league and he's available, I don't hate it. Johnson's back this week. Cardi, Eli Katoa's back this week as well. Just keep an eye on the injury concerns. I think he might get a rest at some point. Liam Henry, I want to talk about here. So Henry is a 62 average when he plays second row, 3 games only, right? 3-game sample size, but the tackle count has been absolutely insane when he's played there. He's named there this week. We've got Liam Martin on a 1-week suspension, and we have Scott Sorensen with a hamstring issue. It means that Liam Henry becomes a guy who could potentially play out the year in the edge back row spot where he has scored massive. I actually kind of like this one. If you're at a point where you've got, Madison or Sorensen, you want to sell one of those guys, keep an eye on the injury news on both of them, but I don't hate the idea of going one of those guys straight to Liam Henry if you're short on cash. Now, if you have the cash, go to Olakau'atu, go to Preston, go to Cam Murray, go to one of these guys, Connor Watson, get them if you have the cash. But if you don't have the cash, if you're short on cash like I am, and you're looking to just use one trade, I love the idea of just going straight to Liam Henry and grabbing that guy who could potentially average 60, which is keeper level. So $599K, you don't have time to wait and see. 4 weeks left, you've got to make the move now. I like Liam Henry right now. I'm into this one. So this is probably what I'm going to do this week. If you want to jump on with me, go ahead. Rolling through, Val Holmes, we talked about him. Fixtures are okay. It was before the Tigers game that I really liked him. AJ Brimson on the bench. Ryan Madison has that. He's got that concern with his ribs, so broken ribs. Talk these out for rest of the year, but he's also been named this week. So Parramatta I don't know. I'm looking at them and thinking, maybe Para are as lazy off the field as they are on it. Like maybe they just named the same team as last week and they're just not really worried about it. But I reckon he'll be out. The issue is now, though, that you think, maybe he comes back next week or the week after and they do painkillers, whatever it is. Why would they be doing that? Like, I don't really understand Parramatta making that move when they're just totally out of contention of anything. Let the man, what's he playing for? Let the man rest up. Let those ribs heal. I don't see him coming back, but stranger things have happened. So keep an eye on the injury news, but I'd be pretty comfortable selling Ryan Madison. Sell him to a player who plays after him, though, so you can see what happens in the team list. Lukey and Blore, not quite keepers. Starling missed a bunch of tackles last week. Levi's back on the bench. There's a little bit of reason for concern, but again, unless you are luxurious with your roster, you probably have to start Starling. So we're all going to be in the same boat. But if you do have a way to de-risk that one, it's not a bad one to de-risk. Eisenhuth's been going all right. Fodder Wake Up, Bateman, meh. Katoa, DeBellin. DeBellin's not a full-blown keeper. Sami, not convincing. Not convinced on the Titans either. I wouldn't jump on him. Victor Radley, Nat Butcher. I'm just going to roll through some of these guys here because they're not super relevant. Ruben Garrick, I will talk about him. 14 points in goal kicks, 38 points. Not convincing in terms of a big score, but I like the Manly fixtures, and he grabs enough attacking stats to be worthwhile. So Ruben Garrick, a lot of people are asking me, should I sell Ruben Garrick? Don't sell Ruben Garrick. I think Ruben Garrick's almost a buy option, actually. Like, if you need a guy who's dual position at that price point, Garrick should be a beast for the run home. I'm jealous of people who have him. Do not sell him. Dom Young's back this week. Worth noting, if you're in a draft league, he might be available on the waivers. Just go grab him. If not, then so be it. But he's up against Para this week, which is a massive plus. They don't defend wings. Every week it's roast Parramatta, but yeah, they're not great on defending wings. But the downside here is he's come back from a hamstring issue. So again, he's a guy you want to de-risk. If you can loophole with him or something like that, try to do it. But if you can't, then you might just have to play him because the upside is so big. Gerbo, Smithies, Twile, Brayley. Look, none of these guys are super relevant. Munster, quick mention. He's up against Penrith this week. I don't think it matters. Munster scores well in tough matchups and scores well in easy matchups. He just sort of lifts when he needs to, basically. So if you've got Munster, stick with him. If you don't, he's not a target of mine, but there is that small bit of potential that he could absolutely pop off. And then rolling down the list here, Adam Reynolds had a good game last week. Joey Manu could be a pod you look at, again, attacking the Parramatta edges. 551K is very cheap. Wing fullback center eligible. I don't mind that as a pod. I'm not going to jump on myself, but I don't hate it. Cowboys match up for KO Weeks this week. I really like this. So I think he should theoretically go pretty well in this one. And you can be pretty comfortable in using him in a loophole for the wing fullback spot, maybe starting him if you're a stretch as well. Then Joel, how did he go last week? 36 points. He's sort of slowly on the rise. Not relevant for fantasy, but on the rise. Wade Egan has a little bit of an injury issue, so just keep an eye on that. Again, if you're an Egan owner and you have other options, probably maybe try not to start him, but he has been in great form lately. Jai Gray, he's had a few issues as well. A few injections at halftime, the HIA that he passed, all that sort of thing. The matchup against Tigers this week on paper is really good, but it's not that simple, right? So he could easily score low, he could score big, whatever it is. I'm starting Jai Gray because I think he's slightly more likely to score well against Tigers, right? But he's had games where he scored tries and scored 29 points. He's had games where he hasn't scored tries and he scored 79 points. So he's a very hard one to predict. Jai Gray, but if you start him through most of these sorts of matchups, he tends to perform. Rolling down the list here, Tony Stagg's not relevant even with that big score. Sam Verrills, Pierce Paul. Pierce Paul is probably not a guy you want to be starting, but at the same time, he's playing 80 minutes in the back row, so you might as well if you really need to. And then we've got Buller, Felt, Sammy Fainu. Look, Sammy Fainu, he's about a 40 average sort of guy in my mind. Oh, yeah, 39.9. There we go. But he's got that matchup against South Sydney this week, who have leaked some points, haven't been a defensive juggernaut. Could be a matchup where he jags a big attacking play. That's kind of what Fino is, right? He's that 35-point scorer plus attacking plays. You're banking on that attacking play. I'll probably be starting him this week because I think South will concede some points on the edges. Whether it's semi-final or not, I can't guarantee anything, but I think he's got a big opportunity to boost off this week. And then rolling down the list here, if you're getting to this section, you're getting pretty desperate, right? So you're looking at guys like Pappenhausen. Tupou could score a few tries against Para. Tommy Talau, the GOAT, the legend. Scotty Sorensen, hamstring issue, minimum 2 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. You don't know with the hammy. But with Scotty Sorensen, I doubt they rush him back. So he is a sell deluxe. Then going down the list here, Greg Marzu, quiet game last week. I'd stick with him if I had him. Atoka Manu is, dead in the water right now. Lemuelu, Suali'i, these guys aren't full-blown sort of keepers. I'll tell you if there's anyone that jumps out at me because I get a lot of questions like this, right? I like, who should I buy under 500K, for example? So this is where we are. We're at 500K, and Talis Duncan jumps out. All right, starting in the edge back row spot. He scored pretty well there last time out. I think he'll go well against Tigers this week too. He's a young guy. He's hard to tackle. Could pull off some attacking plays. I know a few people are grabbing him in draft leagues, for example. Then rolling down the list here, Nickel Clockstad, Feeder, Blaze. Isaac Tungo had a big game last week. He's probably the guy where if you're looking at guys like Howarth, you're looking at Casey McLean, all these sorts of guys. I think Tungo is a tier above those guys. I think he's going to hit some form down the stretch here, but I can't guarantee it against Melbourne. It's a tough matchup. You just need to try out of him, basically. And then let's keep going through. Jack Williams is a good option in draft leagues if you're really desperate there. Keeping on going down. Who else have we got? I mean, at this stage, you're looking at guys at 470K. You're sort of thinking, all right, who has some pop games in them, right? So if I'm looking at this price and I'm looking for players here, either I need them to play this week or I need them to be a cover guy for the rest of the year. So if I'm thinking this week, I'm probably going with a guy like Dan Atkinson saying, all right, well, you know what? He's the only half at Cronulla, 47 points last week. He's got a matchup against Newcastle this week that is exploitable. He scored that 60-point game last time before this when he played next to Braley in the halves as well. So Atkinson could be a shout. Covers wing fullback too. I like that. I'd probably keep rolling down. And you want guys who can potentially put up keeper level scores, even if it's just for a small period of time. So Lenu, for example, no interest to me. Jake Clifford can score all right when he starts. Is he going to keep the starting spot? Probably not. Stephen Crichton, he has big games in him, has a lot of quiet games in him as well. Felice Kafusi, very reliable, 80-minute player, 57 points last week. If you want someone in that mold, don't hate Felice Kafusi. And then going down, Kelma Tuolangi's on the bench. Keep an eye on that situation because he might move into the starting side. And rolling on down like Host, Braley, I've got no interest in this, Sub. Oh, yeah, it gets pretty desperate when you get down to this price. But now you're looking at sort of 420K and you're thinking, all right, here we go. Alex Seyfarth, right? So Seyfarth is a guy who's named to start this week, averages very highly when he plays big minutes as a starter, is not a sexy player and doesn't hold the spot for long periods of time, has a buy in round 26 as well. But he's got 2 weeks before that buy where he probably is a starter and he probably scores you 50 points a week. So if you're desperate, again, at that price point, there's not a lot of guys much better. Brandon Smith, another one, not a reliable option, but up against Para this week, they love conceding a cheap burrow over try. So usually it's wingers, left edge, right edge, middle, slightly to the right, slightly left. These are all the spots that Parramatta are weak, and Brandon Smith can exploit that 100%. So it could be an option, right? I like Seyfarth better than Brandon Smith, but at that price point, you're sort of just taking a shot on a guy. Down to about 400K here. We talked about Fletcher Sharp a lot last week. I was big on playing Fletcher Sharp last week. Big on that, saying, you got to play him last week because that Tigers matchup was good. Don't love the matchup against Cronulla this week. They can concede some points, but Fletcher Sharp needs to score a lot of fucking tries. Like he's got to really go hard and make some big attacking plays to score well in fantasy. So I'm not recommending him as a buy option at all. And if I had him in my team, I wouldn't be starting him either. I don't think he's going to score well this week. He needs to score a couple of tries to score well. That's what I'm seeing from him as a winger. At one point, he had 4 tries off 7 runs in that game, which means it sounds great, but very low work rate in terms of wing compared to Marzu and Ponga, who are doing a ton of work out of that backfield. Watane Zelezniak is a guy where if you want a pod and you think Sean Johnson lights it up, don't get Sean Johnson. Get Watane Zelezniak. He's probably the guy who scores all the tries. So don't hate him as a sneaky pod. And then we're down at 400K and we're thinking, all right, who could potentially pop off for a big score for us? Avarillo's done it before, but he's very hard to predict. Jacob Gagai has the Tigers this week. You could maybe make that case. Casey McLean's up there, but he's been very quiet recently. And then Asofa Solomona, what did he score? 42 last week. He's getting a few more minutes right now. Not my taste, but if you need a player in that position, he's an option. Paseka's done it before. 49 points. There we go. Here we go. We're hitting some value now, right? So Paseka is their number 1 prop in Manly. And he's going to score sort of 40 to 50 points when he's fully fit playing the minutes he should be playing at 384K. Again, if you need a middle at that price point, Paseka is a great option. He's a really good option. I'm going to leave it here for a little bit because I really want to hammer this home. That 35.5 average is very injury affected. I would consider him more of a 40 to 43 average kind of guy. And if you can get him right now, he's got some attacking plays in him as well. I think it's all good. 1.2% ownership too. He's a bit of a pod. If you need a middle forward at that price, Paseka is a good shout. I'll keep rolling down the list here because Cleese Haas, he gets a start again. You could maybe mention that, but it's probably only 1 week. And then going down the list here, Talakai's got the start this week. 24 points to start last week. It's not great, but Talakai is there. He's a boom or bust option at that price. And then down the list here, have we got anyone else who sort of jumps out of us? I mean, Adam Cook, he starts this week, but his scores have been really average. And then Sean O'Sullivan, when he gets a run, he's not bad at that price. Montoya, you could take that shot. Finafuyaki gets a start. Nanai's out this week. Yeah, that's not the worst shout, but we're getting desperate at 300K now. So if you're down at 300K, Stone Street can score tries. And we said this 2 weeks ago, right? He's that guy where he's going to be on that edge at Cronulla where he can score some tries. The issue with him is that Mulatalo's on the extended bench right now. Mulatalo comes back either this week or next week. So you're not buying Stone Street at this stage. Mulatalo is back early. We wish Edric Lee was back, the original fantasy goat here. Tristan Saylor at that price, he's probably going to get a run with Walsh out. He hasn't been scoring well for fantasy, so I'm not super excited about it. And then we get down the list here. Fayatape's hit some form. Mamazelis, if you got Damien Cook, Mamazelis is not a bad cash out. And then there's a couple more guys here I want to mention that could be interesting. So Fletcher Myers, 51 points, got Tigers this week, holds a spot. That price, you can't really go wrong. And then a couple more guys. Dan Kerr. So with Madison out, Kerr could adopt more minutes there in that Parramatta forward pack. And I want to talk about Maverick Geyer as well. So Maverick Geyer, he gets a starting spot this week, probably only for 1 week. Liam Henry's probably back next week. So I don't view him as a full-time guy, but that 41 points last week is attractive. And 242K is basically a cash out for a guy you can start this week. So I don't mind Maverick Geyer at all. And then really down the bottom, there's no one else super interesting here except for, I believe there was someone down here at 230K. Who was I looking at? Purdue. Not really. Yeah, there's no one super interesting. Halasema's out, so you can use Halasema for your loopholes, but that's pretty much it, done and dusted in terms of the buy, hold, sell options. So I'll talk about my team for a sec because I've got some serious problems in my team. So if I get right to the top here, which is proving to be a bit of a struggle. There we go. I'll roll into my team, and I've just copped some absolute brutal injuries over the last couple of weeks. So had a couple of them last week, have another three of them last week, 2 the week before. Last week I copped these boys, Reed Marnie, Ryan Madison, Scott Sorensen, all mid-game injuries. Sorensen posted a beautiful 7 points for me, which was just so great, so awesome. So yeah, my team's in an interesting spot where, look, I like the middle forwards. I like the pack in general. The back line's pretty clean as well. It's a very strong back line. And the bench, look, it goes Finu, Iro, Marnie, Gray, and Weeks in that loophole spot. And then look, Madison and Sorensen are out there. I'm probably looking at using that last trade I have to go. I know, I'm thinking about going Madison or Sorensen out for, oh my God, what's his name? Liam Henry. Liam Henry. I was going to say Lindsay Smith, but it's Liam Henry. Probably going Madison to Liam Henry if Madison is out for the period that we think he's going to be out for. I might keep Sorensen just in case he comes back early or whatever it is, and just have those 2 options there. But that's sort of, I guess I'm going to keep an eye on my loopholes, right? So I'll run a loophole early in the round. So I'll be looking at the matchups here. And I always do my team after I do your teams, guys. But let's see. So Panthers, Storm, Seagulls, and Warriors. I don't have any Seagulls. Don't really have the Warriors. Just Vanilla Blake. Panthers and Storm. I could use maybe Blore in a loophole, but I'm not really that worried about Blore. So I probably have to make that Liam Henry move pretty early because he plays in that first game. But the loophole, I'm probably going to be looking at using maybe Reed Marnie in the loophole there. So first game on Saturday. So use Reed in the loophole and then potentially KO Weeks as that secondary loophole and Jai Gray as the tertiary loophole. So I'll probably run 2 of those guys in 5 and 6, 1 and 4, and then use Madison and Sorensen as those loopers. Although Madison does play, actually Sorensen plays before as well. So I might only have a single loophole. So that's one thing to keep in mind, right? If you're using a certain player for a loophole and they play first game of the round, you actually can't use them as a loophole. If you've got Broncos players, they're ideal. So I'm probably going to have to use Sean Blore in my loophole. That's probably the only way this works. So I'm going to have to do something like this, where I'm going Sean Bloor out. And this is assuming, by the way, I don't make any trades, which isn't likely. By the way, I'll probably make some trades. We've got Sean Bloor out, and if Sean Bloor scores well, then I can just go Madison into that spot and get Sean Bloor on score. Whereas if Sean Bloor scores poorly, I can bring Weeks into that spot instead. So easy play there. We can do the same thing again with the positional loophole as well, but probably don't need to do it. So anyway, that is buy, hold, sells, done and dusted. So hopefully you're looking good for this week. Big thing is if you're in an elimination game this week, use your trades. Use your trades if you're in an elimination game, which basically everyone is for their head-to-head finals. If you've got that situation, just use them. No point saving them at this stage. Make the big moves to try and win this week, and you can figure it out next week. If you're in an overall situation, I'm looking at this and I'm sort of thinking maybe I don't need to trade, right? So I could make that trade. I could go to Liam Henry, which I'm considering, but I could also just run Jai Gray against the Tigers, Iro, Marnie, and then Bloor. It's not ideal, but I'm sort of looking at that and thinking, you know what? Maybe I stick with that and I hold this last trade just in case one of my big money players gets injured instead. I'll consider a few options this week, but it's either that or go Liam Henry, which I'll tell you what, Henry's 60 average is very attractive as well. Anyway, guys, let me know what you're thinking for your trades this week. Jump on Discord as well. But otherwise, comment in trades below. Let me know who you're captaining below as well, and I'll chat to you guys there. Good luck in your head-to-head finals. Sincerely, good luck in your overall chase as well. If you're in a situation where you can really move up the ranks over this next couple of weeks with a few trades in the bank, use them wisely, get difference makers, get guys who can really pop over the top. Don't just make the safe options, make those big moves and grab a hold of it. Good luck this week, guys. I'll see you on the next video. Peace out.